Hi, I'm Mira. This is an episode of Montessori Talks, and today I'm very excited to be talking to Simone Davies of the Montessori Notebook. Hello, Simone.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Mira. It's such an honor.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to talk to you. You're quite a pioneer in sharing Montessori through social media. I've seen you on YouTube, on Instagram. I follow the beautiful pictures of your toddler environment. I get your newsletter and seen some of your online courses. I'm really impressed with how you share Montessori with the world and the way that you do it with your family and in your program. So I'm excited to talk to you today.
Thank you very much. And also, I think it's really lovely because one of my families was visiting Thailand and attended your school while they were living there. So I love the smallness of the world and Montessori and everything. So it's a beautiful way to connect.
Definitely. Montessori makes the world a little bit smaller. It's great. So I have a couple questions for you. The first one is talking about your Montessori journey and how it got started.
Yeah, well, I, like many Montessori teachers, came to Montessori when I had my own children. I had gone to a very traditional school and was more idealistic of what kind of education I'd like to give my children. So even though academically I did fine in a traditional school, I was like, I really want them to love learning and to be curious learners and not just to put up their hand and say, is this in the test, and only then pay attention. Right. And so I'd kind of heard about Montessori when I was living in London, as working in cafes and these kind of things, and I'd met a family and had really two lovely grounded children, and they had been to Montessori school. So I'm like, I should check that out. So there was an open day happening. We went and we immediately fell in love. The classroom was so beautifully prepared and the teachers were so kind and to us and our children. So we immediately put our name down on the wait list and joined the parent-toddler program. Mm-hmm. So from there, I attended the parent-toddler program. I started my Montessori training very soon after. I worked in a parent-toddler community in Australia, and then we moved to the Netherlands. So now I run my own classes here, which I've been running for 10 years, called Jacaranda Tree Montessori. And then I love sharing online, lots of things as well. So on Instagram and online courses, and getting to chat with people like Mira all around the world.
So fabulous. And so you were telling me, so you went to these parent-toddler groups with your children, and then you did the training. I'm curious what made you want to do the training rather than just keeping in the program. What made you get excited to be a teacher or a guide?
So actually, I just realized that I loved hanging out with children. So at all the birthday parties, I was the one playing with the kids and not really talking to the adults so much. And I just really felt like I had enormous empathy for the children and thought it would be fun to do anyway, just while my children are small or something like this. And now 15 years later, I love it, and work doesn't feel like work. So the teacher who was running the parent-toddler program was also so beautiful. She knew I was interested perhaps in training, so she did informal training until an AMI course, the Association Montessori course, ran in Australia. And so I think she just also opened up my eyes, and I was just ready to learn everything I could.
So fabulous. And did it help you a lot in motherhood, going through the program and working in the school and getting the training?
Absolutely, yes. I think it definitely changed the way that I parent. So by attending the parent-toddler classes, it first opened my eyes about how instead of, being the boss of the family, I became the child's guide. And so it's not to say that the children are in charge. Of course, I'll step in and set a limit when I need to, except it just really took all the responsibility off my shoulders. Like, I need to make them learn their numbers as quick as possible, or I need them to do all this stuff. And instead it's like, oh, kids are naturally curious. Oh, children naturally want to help. Oh, how can I set up my space so that they can be involved in our daily life? And rather than having to entertain them, put the TV on while I'm cooking, it's like, oh, they can actually just help in the kitchen, and it's really fun. And of course it's messier and it takes longer and not every day, but it's just a beautiful way to parent, and I found it a much more relaxing way to parent. So it took the stress off the kind of parent that I thought I had to be. I also grew up in an area where people really maybe overschedule their kids and put them in lots of activities, and it really just made me realize that there was a simpler way to parent. So I think that it brought back some, it's a very intuitive way to parent, actually, when you look at it.
It is. Actually, it takes us a lot to decide to be more simple. And once we realize to go more simple, we get so much more benefit. So I love that. It's definitely helped me as a parent to kind of step back, like you're saying, and, oh, wait, they're naturally going to be interested. I don't need to force them. I can give them some tips and then let them explore. And that helps me a lot as well.
So yeah, I also think that it helps not take things personally either, that you're their guide, but when they're having a hard time, that's separate from where, fighting with each other. It's actually they're having a hard time, so how can I help them at the moment? And if I'm having a hard time, I can also have bad days, and how can they help me? So it's a beautiful way to live in family, I think, rather than fighting with each other and making people do things. Definitely.
So I have an experience where I ran a school in Thailand. We were just talking about the family we have in common. And at one point, we had the whole school was in my house. So my house looked like a Montessori school. Everything was set up for the children. And it was really fascinating for me. They would ask me for lessons in the evening. They would do things completely independently. They would ask to use the materials when the school day had finished. And when we went out of that environment, when we started to travel and move to different places, and the house wasn't set up like Montessori anymore, their behavior changed drastically. So I'm curious for you, did you notice a big difference between how your children were in their Montessori environment versus how they were at home?
To be honest, I don't think I did. Even though our house was set up quite simply Montessori style, I think that there was definitely an alignment between how we were parenting at home and what they were receiving at school. But what I do see is that toddlers coming to my classes, for example, who I haven't got a Montessori, set up at home, might behave differently than they do in class. So, for example, they're just super focused and engaged when they're in our classroom because there's beautiful materials that are all set out especially for their age group, and that they're watching older children, so the older children are modeling, so they pick things up very easily. Also, the way that we speak with the children, they're more likely to cooperate because I'm not really giving instructions all the time. I'm kind of working with them and to say, oh, like, we're going to make apples now. Would you like to help? And they just can't wait to help. Or instead of saying, you've got to put the banana peel in the bin, I just say, oh, the peel, it goes in the bin. And I hand it to them and they're like, oh, there's the bin, where's the bin? And then they run over and put it into the bin. And so it's really nice because then parents actually do get to see how I talk with the children, and then they can apply these principles at home as well. Also, just we're so respectful with the children. We speak to them in the same way as we would to an adult. And for some people, it's a real change in how they see their child being spoken to. And they really, I've had parents come and say, wow, I can see that you just speak so differently to my child. And I really want to try and do that too.
Definitely. That's something I love about Montessori is talking to children as human beings and not having to make the different voice and, use different languages, just really talking to them and opening a world of enriched vocabulary and stories, conversations. One thing that I really love about what you do in particular is that you have your programs with the parents coming. Here in the States, it's a lot less common to have a toddler program where the parents have access, or it's like a special workshop once in a while, like what we ended up doing. You said that, I think you told me one time before, in Sydney, it's pretty much common to have the parents and children coming, and that's what you do in Amsterdam. I find that really great. What do you think? Like, do you think that the parents get as much out of it as the children, or sometimes even more?
Yeah, you're right. Like in Australia, that's where my children were born, where we were living when they were younger, it was really common to go to, or not to go to, but to have Montessori playgroups. And when we moved to the Netherlands, there weren't any, so I started it myself. But I do think that the parents get so much out of coming to the classes. And I say that I really love having them in the classroom with me, because when the parent learns, then the child gets access to Montessori 24/7. Because when we do beautiful work in the classroom and then they go home and they're treated a different way, they're getting two different messages. So it compounds on each other if you can do the same at school as at home. So even though some of the children may not have access to a Montessori school, you can also then apply the principles from birth all the way through as they become teenagers as well. And what I find is, like, parents learn in different ways. So when I first started the program, I thought it was going to be like a fun place for the children to play, for them to learn Montessori way, and the parents to come and to observe. And what I found is that over the 10 years I've been running my own classes, I keep developing more and more resources for the parents, realizing that they learn in different ways too. So some people will learn from how I speak with their child, and other people will learn from the handout, like I leave something for them to work on. I call it the challenge of the week, so they might learn from that. Or I also have regular newsletters that get sent out, which someone might prefer to read an email newsletter. And then there might be other people who might follow me on Instagram, and they get inspiration that way. And I love like scaffolding all of the different ways that parents can also learn, because just like children, they learn in different ways. Right. So I think they get a lot out of it. And they also get a lot out of interacting with other parents who come to classes, because you tend to have like-minded families who are joining Montessori play group. And so I often overhear parents talking with each other and saying, oh, this is what I tried, and maybe that's useful for you too. And stories are a great way for people to realize, oh, if it worked for them, maybe that's something that, might be successful for us as well. So it's such a warm, inviting community of people.
It is. And you're talking about all the different ways that you share for the parents. And one of the ways that I found you was through social media. I'm curious, what gave you the idea to start sharing Montessori online, and how that's changed your role as a guide and educator, and what it's done with your community?
Yeah, so it just means that I can reach many more people than can come to my classes. Basically, it all started, I like the internet anyway, so when I started my classes, I set up a very basic website with all the information, and that meant I didn't have to field a lot of phone calls about what the program was. And 10 years ago, that was already quite advanced. And then I had an email newsletter sign up, so people were signing up from all over the world, because I guess people were so hungry for information about Montessori, and it wasn't really available. Right. And so then I realized, oh, well, I can also serve them. So I think back in 2015, I put all of the newsletters that I had written over the last 7 years before that on blog posts. And so there's so much that I love sharing, and it's just another way for people to find this information. And I think social media, use it wisely, and it can be a really powerful thing. It means that, I feel like parents are learning faster, Montessori spreading further. I get emails from the most wild places, and I just can't believe that I'm able to connect with families all over the world and share this, peaceful approach. It's like spreading peace. It's very fun.
It's amazing. I love that about social media and the internet. It's just, it really makes the world so much more connected. And if we use it for good, it is really.
And that's it. I'm on an Instagram break at the moment. So I think sometimes we also need to step back and just remember to live in the present. And it's been fun too.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. It's good to take pauses. So I'm curious, as an educator, do you have a particular mission or goal with your sharing online? I mean, you already mentioned that it gave you a much bigger, broader community from places all over the world. But has it, as also a parent, like, how has it allowed your career to evolve?
To be honest, I just feel like it's another way to share. I just want more people to find out about it. So I love that an Instagram Live, for example, for 5 minutes, I can just share like a little snippet that someone asked in class, and that it might resonate with someone else as well. So I think
also, just sorry to interrupt you, but you're also doing speaking tours now from that audience, right? Like, people are saying, hey, come and give one of these toddler programs here, or come to this part of the world, come speak, talk about Montessori. Like, you're getting out there a lot more sharing because of it, right?
Oh, I just love spreading the message anywhere that I can and that I have the time to do and to help people. And there's so many other wise people out there that are also sharing the message. So it's really like just wonderful to be able to connect with Montessori people also from all around the world. When we were at the Montessori Congress 2 years ago in Prague, it was amazing to be able to, hug these people who, you'd met via like Facebook and online communities. So it's a really special way to definitely be able to reach more people. And I also got to raise funds to do a Kickstarter to write a book last year as well. So that was amazing. And the community got behind that as well, sharing it with all their friends, so that we, and it just shows how much need there is for this information. And I just wanted something super accessible, something that I would have loved to have, like a little handbook with all the Montessori tips, and basically any question that parents wrote me asked me in class, I just wrote it down and made sure it was in the book as well. So it's really beautiful to read, but it also answers all the questions that people ask. the
And
time.
it's a beautiful book as well. It's beautiful, beautiful images of children working with the materials and the setup, and that's fabulous.
Yeah.
What a great book.
Yoko Imai, she's a Japanese illustrator who lives here in Amsterdam, and she'd come to classes with her son. And so when I said that I was writing the book, she asked if she could illustrate it, and I was like, yes, please. And she was just brilliant at, I'd say, I've got this idea for a table to make this visual, and it'd come back always exactly right, but even more beautiful than I expected. So it's a delight. It doesn't feel like a parenting book, so.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's a great book. And thank you for that contribution to the Montessori continuation. I'm curious, for people that are just starting out with Montessori, what would you tell them to start with first?
Yeah, I think that you can just start with what you already have. You don't need to rush out and buy lots of materials and change things a lot. But probably what you want to do is like just have a box by the door in your living room and just notice what things aren't really being played with at the moment. And so you can definitely, I like the old phrase, less is more. So really just see what your child's playing with at the moment and keep out those toys, and maybe put the others in a box, and you can always rotate them in when you notice that they're not being played with so much. And then you can actually also really start to observe why they like that toy and what they're trying to master, and then perhaps start to set up some more activities that are encouraging these skills, the things that they're really interested in at the moment. In Montessori, we call them sensitive periods. So that's showing an intense interest in a certain area. And so if you notice, for example, that they really like small objects, you could put together an activity where they're opening up little purses and finding small objects inside, and so they're also getting great eye-hand coordination to open the zippers and the press studs and things inside. Or if a child's really into vehicles, it's like, okay, how can I use this intense interest in vehicles to explore language? So you can give them all the proper names, have books, you can make books, you can draw, things to do with vehicles. You can use washi tape, which is that Japanese masking tape, and make a road on your floor in your living room, or get chalk and draw them we have nice pavements here in Amsterdam where you could make an outside one as well, and get out into nature. Anyway, so I think really you don't need to go out and buy a lot of things, but you can just learn to start to follow the interests of your child and start maybe having less is more, and really being specific about what kind of activities to provide to your child.
Definitely. And also what you were saying earlier about slowing down and seeing what they're interested in and going for that. So that's perfect. You gave a lot of really good examples of how to get started on a budget and using what you have. This year, my family and I, we bought an RV and we're traveling with the children. So I'm doing a mobile Montessori project and have been trying to figure out what is the most minimal amount of materials that I needed to continue to educate them and be on the road and see things. You already mentioned a few things, but what would be the top 3 things that you would say to parents, like, you need these 3 things in your house and you'll be able to keep giving them some kind of Montessori education?
Well, I think that particularly because I work with toddlers, I always like to be able to give them access to all areas, like being able to wash their hands themselves, or reach something in the kitchen so that they can help prepare food. So because you're not going to be able to take a learning tower with you, I would definitely find like a foldable step stool so that they can be able to access all the areas. And then look, even in the RV, to set things up so that they can have as much independence as possible, because they really would love to probably be able to get their bowl out and be able to help set the breakfast table, and keeping it really simple. And then I don't think you need a lot of materials, because it's really, so I would take books, for example, because books are great for conversations and connection and language and, shared experiences. And if you choose one with lots of details, then you'll be able to read the same book over and over again and get so much out of it. And then and if I was really limited on space, maybe I would just pack a notebook for each child, and some pens and things for them to draw, because they can draw. It's saved me so many times. I always have a notebook in my backpack, and so whichever child is with me, I'm meeting up with friends for coffee and they have children, they're always drawing and have a great record. So, and they can learn to write eventually, or they could have a diary, or we've made crosswords and we play boxes, and there's so many things you can do with a notebook. So that would be great. And it'd also be a nature journal for when you go out and explore the great outdoors, which is the best material you could possibly get with your RVing around the world. But actually, you definitely need to let us know what your essential list is at the end of your adventures.
Oh yeah, I'm planning to at least put some kind of PDF together of what what essential combinations of materials, because I have the older children. Mine are more primary and early elementary stage. So I do want some concrete Montessori materials, but I'm trying to figure out what few I can get the most lessons out of. So I'll definitely share that at the end of the experience. But I completely agree with you. The step stool is always the first thing that I get for the children to give them access. And luckily here in the RV, but I think you can do it in any home, the lower shelves, the lower drawers, that's all for the children to have access to, and as much kind of in their realm as possible. In a previous conversation we had, you talked about having tea with a mother and noticing the difference between your home and her home, and the children wanted to make a book and they were coming up and asking for the scissors and all these other things, and how basically just that little switch in your environment of making sure that the children know where their art supplies are, or their notebook or their paper or their pencils are, that makes a huge difference for them, for their independence and then for their learning. Would you recommend any other little tips and tricks for setting up at home?
Well, I always like to, for example, in their bedroom, have somewhere where they can wake up and play quietly for a while to give you a couple of extra minutes. So for a young child, it might be as simple as some, simple quiet toys and a basket of books. And, for older children who are start to get into imaginative play, playing out all of the, real life that they see, you could keep them busy in there. So that would be something that I would definitely do. Even like thinking about things in the bathroom, like do you hang the bath towels low so that the children can reach them themselves? Or do you need a step stool in that bathroom so they can get into the bath themselves? Perhaps your child doesn't like getting into the bath because they don't feel like they're in control. Mm-hmm. And we've already talked about having like a cupboard down low where they can help themselves to their bowls and things. But you could also set up a water source down low, which might just be a small jug with a little bit of water in it so that they can help themselves to a glass of water during the day. And then you don't find that they're nagging you all the time for all the little things, and it frees up your time to be connecting with them. And I also just love to have by the front door a special spot where they can hang up their school bag and they can hang up you'll put their shoes. And in Amsterdam, where it's very cold, we have lots of layers like scarves and gloves and things like this, so it keeps everything. And I like that phrase. It's not Montessori specifically, but a place for everything and everything in its place is super. And to think about that each time. I also really like to sit on the floor, particularly with young children, to see what it looks like from their perspective, because sometimes you just think, why are they always in the plant and pulling at the light switch? And if you look down low, often that's all they can see other than like the legs of a table. So how can you make their space at their height super attractive? So hang some artwork down low for them, have a plant that they can look after, maybe only put out the watering can once a week unless you want your plants to be very well loved. So hopefully that gives people lots of tips as well.
Fabulous, Simone. Well, yes, I think you've given us quite a lot in a short period. Amazing tips. And I'll just recap. Basically, getting started in Montessori doesn't have to break the bank. It can be super simple, even as much as step stools, notebooks, and reading books with children and getting out into nature and talking to them and having them be part of your daily life. I think that's some of the best advice to parents ever. And it takes a lot of pressure off of a lot of expensive toys. So
really,
definitely. Well, Simone, I love meeting you. Thank you so much for sharing in the Montessori Talks series. And I look forward to seeing more to come from your book and your sharing on the social media and all the things that you're doing in the Montessori world. And I thank you for being part of my Montessori adventure.
Thank you so much, Mira. It's been delightful. Bye.
Bye.